Hey friends, welcome to the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert. Today's guest is a seasoned sales pro, say that 3 times real fast, that has flipped his mindset to provide marketers with artificial intelligence-based insights. Let's dig into that and more with today's guest, Mike Lewis. Mike, good to have you on the show, buddy.
Good to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So I was thinking, I always say this with my guests. When did I meet you? I met you for the first time. I think we were introduced by someone years ago, and we had coffee in St. Louis Park.
Yeah, you know what it was you were on one of the Coffee and Closers episodes, and you said your favorite sales book was Never Split the Difference. And I was like,
Ah,
I need to talk to this guy. And so I reached out and was like, me too.
I love it. I love it. Good. Couple of sales guys. So my opening wasn't so bad about seasoned sales pro, and we will talk about that a little bit more because you are a bit of a sales guy, but now you are a marketer. And I want to talk about Click 360 and what you're doing. But we're going to start out with a fun fact about you is that you grew up in Chicago, and when people from the Twin Cities meet people that grew up in Chicago, or maybe it's just me, most of these people are like, yeah, I grew up in Chicago, but they ended up growing up in like Schaumburg or like some kind of suburb that's like an hour outside of Chicago. And they just say Chicago because they don't want to say Illinois and all that stuff. You actually grew up in Chicago.
Yeah, I had a 312 area code, which was it was like a thing of pride for a very long time. And then when they split Chicago into 312-773, we were still 5 minutes from downtown, but it almost felt like, oh man, now we don't have the 312 anymore.
Your rite of passage.
I grew up about, I'd say 10 minutes north of downtown, 7 minutes from the lake. So, really, I got to grow up in a city, and moving here, people thought I was nuts for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how far from the lake were you?
I mean, Chicago's actually fairly well laid out in a grid. So I would say like maybe 13 streets over, which
Sweet.
city block, that's about 2-3 miles maybe.
Yeah. Did you, every time I go to Chicago, I have a buddy that lives down there, and we, when we were younger and could do this stuff and not embarrass ourselves, we'd go down and play volleyball down, on the beach.
Yeah,
That
Oak Street.
that whole vibe down there is so cool.
They've changed a lot too. Even since I used to live there, now it's like a commercialized area. They've got restaurants and dining establishments, and yeah, there's a ton of stuff there now. It's not just a beach.
Yeah. And so you grew up there and you decided to so you're a hockey player, right?
Yeah, and that's actually what brought me to Minnesota, hockey country USA.
So where'd you go to college?
So I went to St. Olaf here. Growing up in Chicago, if you're going to play hockey, you're going to play way outside of downtown. And if you're going to go to school for it, you're not going to go to school for hockey in Illinois. So I sort of made a deal with the parents back in the day that if I went to school to play hockey, it has to also be someplace to get an education. So that just happened to be St. Olaf. Dumb luck, moved to a state where, hockey's also great, education's also great, but the people are great. And so I've sort of figured out that if you move to Minnesota, you'll stay here the rest of your life. I don't find many people that fall outside that way of thinking.
Right. How did you get introduced to St. Olaf? Like there's a lot of school. I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day about, and one of our guests about Bemidji State, right? So you've got Bemidji State and you've got St. Cloud and you've got all the MIAC schools that are in the same conference as St. Olaf. What brought you to St. Olaf specifically?
Somehow somebody knew the school, like my guidance counselor knew the school, and of the MIAC schools, like I wasn't a good enough hockey player to get into several of the MIAC schools, to be completely honest. And then from the educational component, certain schools had certain, specialties. And so from an educational standpoint, St. Olaf just sort of aligned with what I was looking for, like I said, academically, and I could still play hockey.
What'd you go to school for?
I was an econ and Spanish double major.
Really, econ and Spanish. Like you are the only person I've ever met that's got econ and Spanish as their double major. I think
it was. I went to a school called Latin, the Latin School of Chicago, where you actually ironically had to learn Latin. So you had the basis for the Romance languages. So Spanish was just natural for me. The econ was as close as we could get to a business degree at a non-business school. Yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah. So did you take then your double major of econ and Spanish and spin that into your first job out of college?
I really didn't. What happened was, see, coming out of college, I thought I was going to do so many things, but a recruiter grabbed me at a sort of a recruitment conference, and he said, "You're a sales guy." I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Yeah, you are. You're a type A. You're personable. You're funny. You're a sales guy." And so I didn't really understand what he meant, because for all of us in sales, we feel like it's sort of that icky, like force this thing on you type sale or business.
Yeah.
But what he realized is that, when you have the ability to listen, empathize, and problem solve, you do very well in this thing called sales. And so my first job out of college, I was actually selling commodity-based technologies, right? I worked for a company called Canon Business Solutions, where we sold Canon, Loeffler sold Canon,
All right.
Dankus sold Canon. I mean, everybody had the exact same product. So you couldn't always win on price. You had to learn to sort of be an empathetic problem solver and a listener.
So you,
So
s-
no
you,
Spanish.
you sold, right, right. So you sold, yeah, I'm glad we got that out of the way. Do you speak any Spanish now?
I do a little bit. We always do that thing at home, like when Spanish is spoken on TV, the wife looks over and says, "What did they say?" It's like, this was 20 years ago.
Right, right. And haven't been keeping it up. I wonder if Rosetta Stone is Rosetta Stone still a thing?
I think so. I think you've got that and a platform called Babbel, I think, are the two
Oh
leaders. And
yeah,
I've definitely looked and going back and doing, because it's got a lot of real world applications still, no
yeah,
question.
yeah, for sure. So you sold Canon copiers and print management systems in competition with some of the more well-known uh, VARs, I guess. So value-added
Yeah.
resellers. So you worked in that world. Tell me a little bit about like what it was like to work directly for the manufacturer selling against value-added resellers.
Oof. What actually I thought was really good back then, and it sort of still resonates with me, is when you work for the manufacturer, you talk about having like there's an authenticity to it, right? A lot of the resellers will sell the system, but then off-brand components, and so it's a lot like, if you buy a Volkswagen and you go to the Volkswagen dealer, you get Volkswagen parts, versus
Mhm.
if you go to just anybody, you don't know what parts you get, and so there's sort of an authenticity of the machines work better, more efficiently, longer.
Mm,
But as there's a value trade-off to how much am I willing to pay to get an
right.
original manufacturer's part versus what's good enough for long enough.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I really had to learn not just to compete on a Canon product, but that's also where you learn to sort of compete as a salesperson.
Right.
And then also, back to never split the difference, you learn to create value
Mm, mm,
versus just selling a product, because they could beat us on price every day, and they did
yeah.
every day.
Well, I will say that Loeffler doesn't support this show financially or anything like that, but I will give them a shout out because I'm good friends with the Loefflers, and they
Yeah.
are a bunch of them are members of Coalition 9. So I will say that if you're gonna go buy a coffee, buy from Loeffler.
Yeah, they're
Sorry,
great.
buddy. Right?
They're also
Yeah.
great sponsors of the Wild, and as we know, I'm a hockey
Yeah.
guy, so
Yeah. I hear you. So you did that for a couple of years, slung copiers,
yep.
and decided to transition into something a little bit different. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't love it by any way, shape, or form. But while I was there, Canon was the color leader, and color got you access to a lot of like the ad agencies and the marketing companies where they're doing proof points in color and color matching, stuff like that. And Canon had the best color, so started working with a lot of companies that were trying to do like their true color prints for their Pantone matching and stuff. I was like, what do you guys do? Like, oh, we're an ad agency. Well, what's that? Just started learning more about it. And actually the same recruiter, I went back to him. I was like, so, what do you have in this world? And he plugged me into a company that has had 19 names since, but most Minnesotans will know it as either AJ Indoor or Next Media,
Yeah.
right? Where, I mean, we had two products. One everyone knows is the restroom ads, right?
Yeah.
You're actually selling messaging to a captive audience, which is 100% gender specific. So you didn't have to do like the guessing test of who you were going to target.
Right. You knew basically this one can go on a urinal, or it's going to go, in a seated position, but you have to know what, well, I mean, and now you think about it, there's a ton of like non-gender specific
Mhm.
restrooms. So I guess it is a little bit more challenging from a target market perspective, but back when you were doing this, it was very focused on that gender probably, and whether if right.
The gender piece was great, but I mean, so sort of to what captured my attention, ironically, is what captured everyone's attention, is that captive audience, high dwell time eyeballs. So you
Mm,
have, let's say up to 3 minutes with somebody and their undivided attention. I know it sounds funny, but really, when you talk marketing, captive audience attention's everything.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was sort of my foray into marketing, where I realized whoever sources the most eyeballs wins. And if the longer you have their attention, the more valuable it is. And I mean, that will actually bleed through into our conversation about Click 360, about sourcing eyeballs. But that was
Yeah.
sort of my first aha moment of, okay, whoever has the most eyeballs wins.
Right. Right. And so you did that for a while, and then you transitioned into a French company.
Yeah. So after about 3.5 years there, a company called JC&Co, which for our American friends, I equate to like the European Clear Channel, right? So they've got all sorts of what's called outdoor messaging, ads that are away from the home. They actually opened up an office in the Twin Cities, and they were sourcing someone to run the Minneapolis airport concession, because they have two divisions in the United States pretty much, which were in the transit world. They had the bus stations, the bus shelters, and they had the airports, where, you know, again, you've got this high dwell time audience, tons of eyeballs. And so they were sourcing someone in Minnesota. I was like, I know all the agencies here. I'd be happy to take this on.
Right.
And that very quickly became, you know, Mike running the entire Midwest, from like, you know, Ohio on the east to Denver on the west, Minnesota on the north, and Texas in the south, because we had properties everywhere. And so that was my first foray into sort of what I call the spray and pray marketing. Put sign on wall, hope somebody makes phone call. And I now joke, there's no room for hope in marketing. But that was, you know, we'll probably get to it, but that was sort of my first place where people are like, how do I measure this?
Yeah.
And that was the first pain point that I realized in marketing, is that they can't measure.
So even though you were selling this whole time, you still had your head on a swivel about the impact and power that marketing had, because it was part of the conversation you were selling every day, right?
Yeah, because back then, I mean, outdoor and out of home, it's measured in how much of the audience that I reach, right? And so it's very much ascribing to the law of averages. If I reach enough people, I'll get enough phone calls, I'll sell enough product. And so, I mean, even back then, we were getting killed by digital marketing. This was mid to late 2000s. Measurability had become a thing. And if you couldn't measure out of home marketing, it got a lot less of the budget than, you know, some of your more digital or mobile assets.
Right. Well, what do you think in that? So you spent 10 years there. I know that I know that from the time that we've connected in the past. What is the one of the greatest lessons you learned in selling that solution?
Um, there are a couple things to it. I think most importantly was, in marketing, it's very easy to get lost in like the sizzle of the messaging. Like if I put a really cool message on here, I think one of the biggest lessons I learned was actually understanding the intent of both the marketing initiative and the message. So we did a lot better when we didn't just say, how much money do you have? How many signs can we put in there? It was, what's the point of the message? What's the point of the sign? So if you're, one of my favorites was when Samsung first came out with their NFC charging capabilities. They wanted to promote that. And where do you not have the access to charge anything? An airport. You know, people sit on floors, they hide in the McDonald's. And so when we actually went and like understood the problem is there's no outlets. The solve is this very cool charging thing. What we did was we created a campaign that was sort of bespoke to them, where they were branding outlets throughout the airport, right? And the outlet hunt. It wasn't just a message anymore. Now it was actually connected to like a real world solve.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I met you, then you were not at JC&Co. You were doing your own thing. You decided that I'm gonna go be a contract, or fractional is the word that we use now.
Yeah.
Sales guy. Fractionals has caught fire here in the last few years. And so, what was the mindset and the thought process around I'm gonna go do my own thing?
I feel like it was less of a mindset and more of like so going back to what I mentioned before with this measurement thing, when I was at the French company, one of the things that I brought to their attention was we have this great ability to have this one-to-one communication with a captive audience of influential people. You know, we can do a lot more of this technological stuff, like, I don't know, texting, right? Or doing something where somebody can communicate with a message. And they were more of an old school play. Like they were very much, you know, the medium is the message. So we don't need to have, you know, technological conversation of communicating between the two. So from there, I had gone to some place that had a little bit better understanding of two-way communication between out-of-home messaging and end user. But what I started to see was there was a lot of companies in the world that were starting to build really cool, what they called back then and a little bit today, ad tech and martech, advertising technology and marketing technology. So that was sort of my epiphany where it's like, okay, people are creating really cool things that solve for what I've been trying to solve for forever, which is how to give that marketer the information needed to know what's working and what's not. So that's why I sort of switched this fractional world of, they're really cool they're great at creating tech. They just don't want to sell. It takes, as you know, it takes a certain weirdo to want to actually be a salesperson.
Right. Yeah. You got to have a little bit of little, well, I don't know, a little off kilter. I know I am, but I know that, you got to get really passionate about what you're selling. And I think based on the life that you had lived up to that point in sales, that was informing your decision into wanting to go into some of this stuff is what it sounds like to me.
The passion piece is exactly it. So when I met my partner, I was actually working with a digital agency on, sourcing sales, and the digital agency was very much trying to prove that the digital marketing they were doing was driving revenue. So when I met my partner, Michael, he was already building a platform that was solving for this problem of measuring ad spend to return on ad spend. So my friend introduced me to him and I was like, if salespeople ever get their hands on this thing, you're going to be a billionaire. And fast forward, I realized salespeople still benefit from it, but it's the marketer who really gets the information that they need to drive that immediate insight on, okay, dollar spent here is worth more than dollar spent here. And that's where the passion really came in, like all the way back to signs on walls. It was, how do I give that marketer that immediate actionable feedback that they can actually use?
Right.
Form their decisions.
Right. I have this weird picture in my head that because I've met Michael and I obviously know you, that when you two met, it was like that scene in Step Brothers where they both did we just become best friends? Was it kind of like that?
I don't know if it was as emphatic, but yeah, it was like, he was like, well, here's what I'm doing. And I was like, well, here's what I'm doing. And actually my buddy was like, you guys just need to go talk about this thing. I was immediately excited. And if you talk to Michael, he'll be like, anybody who's building cool technology, my first recommendation is find a mic like right away.
Right.
So I don't know if it was so much Step Brothers, but if that's the image that comes to you.
So I don't know which one is Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. I really didn't give a shit, but I will say that there's that picture in my head because you guys are so much alike in certain ways and so opposite in other ways, introvert, extrovert, and all the other, stereotypical things around what a technologist versus a sales guy should be. But I do think the first time I met Michael, I said to you, you need to get this guy in front of more clients because he's got so much knowledge and he's such a smart dude. Yep. And and at that time, I think it's evolved quite a bit. Click 360 has. So what was Click 360 when you first came together with Michael versus where it is now?
That's an awesome question. And I remember it very vividly because we talked about it for a very long time. And you're right. Michael he's first of all, he's super smart, but he's also very capable in terms of selling and sitting in front of customers and be like, here's why this thing is so cool. It's why he's sort of the purple unicorn. When we first started talking, it was a very advanced cart abandonment behavior tool. So it was able to say this person did these behaviors, got to the cart and abandoned. So right now what we're saying is this is somebody who either sales should call or marketing should retarget because behaviorally they should have converted. Vice versa is also true, right? You can tell who shouldn't have converted and don't bother with that cart. Now, fast forward, probably almost 3 years now, we've taken that concept of seeing which should have bought and which wouldn't, and we've expounded upon that to say behaviorally, all these patterns and sequences of behavior, can we now differentiate between them and understand exactly how each and every one of them should convert to revenue? So that instead of just saying this cart abandoned, let's go target this person, we're saying, here's the 17, 18 different ways people convert to revenue for this business. Let's create a marketing funnel for each. And I think that part's super important because the sales funnel is not one size. And it's a lot of what we do in sales and marketing right now is we create a funnel. We try to source as many people as we can to get that. We double our effort to the top, which is super expensive. Now, what we're trying to help people focus on is instead, there could be 93 different funnels for 93 different behaviors. So why don't we optimize for each one of those so that as a marketer, my best, let's go back to copiers. My best color people are coming from this channel. My best high speed printer people are coming from these people. My best managed print services come from this source. So you treat them all as they should be treated based on their behaviors in the funnel.
Yeah, and I think what you guys do so good in the time that I've researched and spent time talking to you is that you really are able to take true data and support the efforts that marketers are putting through for their clients. Because I think in marketing, it's so hard to prove
Yeah.
return on investment, I guess, or any type of like behavioral anything based on any type of data that's out there. It's basically, it's clicks, it's time spent on a website, it's that kind of stuff. Which is it can be a little loosey goosey, where this is really actionable data that can be used to inform future behaviors within the organization.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because we always used to say, don't measure the vanity metrics. The vanity metrics tell you what people are doing, but rarely does it tell you why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of platforms out there that will measure, for example, an ad to a deal, or it will measure a click to a goal,
Mm-hmm.
or an impression to a conversion. But what's been super valuable for marketers is that full funnel attribution. So I can see what channel drives my best top of funnel, what converts them to my middle of funnel, what then generates revenue, and then how can I go back and wash, rinse, repeat. Once I know ABC is the funnel, how do I create a better ABC funnel and then do that for all sorts of different customers?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
Where are you guys in your growth trajectory here? So where you've got you and Michael that are partners in this, and you're working with a lot of different firms. Tell me a little bit about like where are you now, and where do you see yourself going in the next couple of years?
So when we first incorporated, we were focusing on B2B complex sales cycle, where you've got 6 or 7 different buying personas in the decision-making process. And you need to be able to differentiate between their behaviors so that, when you have account-based intent, right? So if you've got CEO, CMO, CXO, CFO, differentiating between all of them in the funnel behavior, but you don't have intent until you see the director of IT, right? The person who's actually going to plug this thing in. Fast forward to what sort of COVID has done to us. We were working with a friend who was in e-commerce, and he basically said, I have to create personas, I have to optimize customer journeys, and I have to measure for revenue. Can you help me with that third piece? And I said, yeah. Well, actually, why don't we just plug this thing in, see which customer journeys create revenue, and you can build your personas around people that buy from you. And so I say that because what eventually happens, he goes, if you can do that, if you can solve for this problem, right? Optimize customer journey for revenue and understand who buys and where they come from, that's an e-commerce problem. And so what we're seeing a lot now, especially with the end of third-party cookies and the iOS 14 privacy update, is marketers are losing insight into being able to see that full funnel attribution in e-commerce. And so they are doing a ton of spray and pray on paid ads. And so I go back to whoever, sources the most eyeballs wins. But if you have to pay for that and you can't tell which ones convert to revenue, that's an expensive problem.
Right.
So that's where I see us going forward, being able to solve for that. And that's a very painful problem, because in e-commerce, you usually have, one marketer on the team or two, and they've got the world on their shoulders because they have a budget they're responsible for and a goal to hit. And, when they go back to ask for more money at the end of the year in the boardroom, they better have, like, to your point, they better have something that proves exactly which dollar created which revenue.
I'm going to ask you a question that is super loaded. I know this. I feel like you kind of answered it, because I feel like you guys are living in the future, right? So all this stuff I hear, and I am in tune, but I feel like there's a part of what you're saying that I'm like, holy shit, what is this guy talking about? Because this is so future based, and we're not even there yet. And I think the things you are doing are so futuristic. However, with that said, where's marketing going in the next 3 to 5 years? Like, let's actually just focus on 3 years, because I think 5 years is bonkers. But where's marketing going in 3 years?
Marketing, and this is my opinion, this is not
Yep.
endorsed. Marketing is going back, I think, to what it's always meant to be and what it always was good storytelling and engagement from marketers, creating, when we talk about online, owned material, owned media, like your social media channels, your websites, first party customer journey. So how can I optimize my user experience on site to improve conversions because they actually enjoy being here? Um, I'm expecting and I'm telling marketers, especially with the end of third party cookies, start focusing on creating that first party customer journey on assets you own. So you're not paying for eyeballs. And really getting back to what you were meant to do as a marketer and what you love, which is
Mm-hmm.
storytelling, good
Mm-hmm.
storytelling, and allowing people to subscribe because they want to, not because, an ad showed up and they're like, oh, yeah, you do know that I've been searching for shoes today. That's not
Mm-hmm.
creepy at all.
Right.
You know?
That literally happened to me last week. I'll tell you something. I was talking to my wife about a product, and I kid you not, an hour and a half later, it was on Instagram, and that stuff creeps me out, man.
Leave it. Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
Our neighbors actually mentioned that we were new car searching, and their Alexa actually said, "Your neighbors are new car searching. Maybe you should." I
Oh
mean,
no.
something to that effect.
Right.
Uh,
And that's, you have a lot of the basis of what you have with Click 360 is AI, but there's the deeper AI. And I think even in what you said about getting back to the grassroots marketing around storytelling and things like that, I do think AI is going to play a pretty major role into how some of those stories are being told, and in the personalization around some of the things that need to happen.
It will. And I mean, some marketers will agree and some won't, but I look at so what we've just been talking about is search intent. Aaron was searching for something,
Mm-hmm.
therefore ads are being served to him via that's that third party cookie,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
everyone gets to see what Aaron's doing. And that's what's going away. And I think what's going to happen with AI is it's actually going to, a lot like what we're doing, is it's going to start recognizing not just that Aaron is searching, but also the pattern of his search is telling a little bit more information about how likely he is to convert. And so, where we just focus from website forward, someone is going to win the website backwards game with
Mm-hmm.
AI as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is Aaron's behavior off site
Mm.
that gives somebody more information?
I think I think your business is one of the most fascinating. Every time I talk to you, and when I sit in on your Coalition 9 sessions, and just every time you talk about this stuff, it boggles my mind, the things that you're capable of doing, and the breadth and depth of the insights and data that you're able to provide. I just think it's so great.
Listen, this kind of goes back to that paradigm shift you asked about earlier. Like, I saw people doing cool things. We're not the only ones. There's so many companies doing cool stuff in marketing. I mean, even when I was leaving the out-of-home world, there were companies that they were able to marry up mobile device information and in-store conversion, and then geolocate where this person has been going. I mean,
Nice.
it's half creepy, but the other side is so that Aaron doesn't get bombarded with shoe ads when he's not buying shoes, right? It's meant to actually improve customer satisfaction, because one of our good friends here in town actually said, somebody said, I think it's creepy that, we track information on our sales. And he said to them, well, how much worse would it be if you knew nothing about them because you didn't do any tracking?
Right.
Oh, you're going to piss them off.
Right.
Marketers.
I get it. It's just, you guys are doing cool stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff out there, and I'm super interested to see where some of this stuff goes. It's going to be crazy, especially, coming out of the pandemic and all this other stuff we've got all these people that have been on Zoom calls and Google Meet, and who knows how much information's taken out of Google Meets, all that stuff. Right. I just think it's going to be so fascinating on some of the things that are going to come out of that.
Even, some platforms out there right now are measuring facial expressions. How interested is this person really in what you're saying? Right.
All right. Well, on that note, we're definitely going to transition into 9 questions. So our platform on this is that I have selected 9 random questions to give a little bit more insight of who Mike Lewis is. Mike, will you confirm that you have not seen these questions in advance?
Nope. That's part of the concern.
All right. I love that answer. All right. So we're going to get started. What is your favorite hobby?
Hockey.
Nice. All right. That's it? I feel like
Okay,
that's
fair.
that's a given. Like you
Yeah,
already talked
fair,
about
fair.
hockey.
Favorite hobby outside of that is probably photography.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of stuff?
A lot of what we do a lot of hiking, so it's a lot of nature and scenery, but I love to screw around with things like aperture settings so I can actually, change the light and the way things are moving in the photos. So
Sweet. All right.
yeah.
Sweet. All right. Good answer. Not what I would have expected. I like that. Where would you go if you were invisible? Keep it clean.
Keep it clean. If I were invisible, actually top of my mind, I kind of want to go inside of Fort Knox because I've heard enough conspiracy theories that say there's not enough gold to support the dollar anymore. And I kind of want to see how much is there, but just to see if it's true or not.
That's an awesome answer. Not anywhere close to what I would have expected, but I love that. Who is or was your favorite cartoon character as a child?
As a child, actually, I have a really weird answer. I'm going to move a little bit beyond child, but a little bit before like adult. My favorite comic book was now I can't think, Venom. So Bad Spider-Man. I don't know what that says about me, but I was a big Venom fan.
Well, we had Darren Lynch on a previous episode, and he's a huge comic book person, and he said his favorite is, I think it's Nighthawk, which is like Robin after he decided he didn't want to be Robin anymore.
I didn't even know that. See, now I'm learning things.
Tell me about this. It's fascinating. All right. What is your favorite piece of clothing?
I have a lot of hats. So I think, and I've always had sort of a hat thing. I've still got hats from, the original, what were those? Not starter hats, like college town hats. I've got one for all my teams, wherever we go. The most recent one I had gotten was from Polbridge, Montana. Cause I'm like, I'll never be here again. It's the last town in America without electricity. So got a hat.
All right. What is your favorite song?
Don't have one. I kind of like whatever's on, but right now, when I'm not jamming a Post Malone, I love America Tin Man.
What is that?
It's from the 70s. The band's name is America. The song is Tin Man.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where were you? This is one of the 9 questions. Where were you when you first heard that song?
Unfortunately, probably in this office. I've been
a lot of time there
since 2007. So, when screens are off, I'm usually jamming to either, like I said, Post Malone, classic rock, or country.
Yeah. When you are looking to get ground yourself or reset yourself, just kind of get back to what really matters, what do you do?
This is actually something I've been working on in COVID because I don't know that I have a real true way of grounding myself. I think one of the best ways, and my wife has been helping me with this, is get up, get out, and go walking. Which is where you bumped into us that one day. It's like, get out, get away from the screen. I was once told that trying to stare at a blank screen and telling yourself to be productive is a quick way to alcoholism, right?
Right. I don't doubt that for a second, man. And I read a book called The Net and the Butterfly, and it's about harnessing creativity. And some of the greatest inventors, they would just go for walks. If you read the Steve Jobs book, he would do walking meetings, and that's where they felt like they were the most creative. So I totally get that. Yeah.
Getting out and walking, and then I find some of my best ideas come to me when I'm driving, because it's you can't think of anything else. So you kind of clear the mind for a minute. Yeah,
you got to be focused. I would debate that, though. I think a lot of people are doing other things when they're driving, unfortunately, right? What is your normal bedtime and wake up time?
Normal bedtime has gotten worse and worse the more and more I play around with data and stuff, but I'd say around 1:32 a.m. and then wake up time is around 7:38.
Well,
so I'm not an early riser, but I'm definitely a night owl.
Yeah. Well, I think you work in tech, so that's kind of a rite of passage. I don't think anybody in tech goes to bed before midnight.
Well, and to your point about when do you feel grounded? It's when everyone else has sort of ceased to communicate, and that's when you have a chance to actually get some work done.
Yeah. Who is your mentor and why?
Gosh, again, something I need to work on because I don't think I have an official mentor. I've had a few throughout every time I sort of had a new career, I had somebody within that office building who acted as a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
So I've taken bits and pieces away from a lot of my different leadership teams. A lot of stuff I still believe in, like, God gave you 2 ears, one mouth, so you can do twice the listening as you do talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my boss at Canon, by the way. Yeah, I don't think I have any true mentors at this point, which is something I should probably work on or get. But like I
Right.
follow guys like Gary V, who give me sort of an arm's distance away, somebody who I really believe in what they do and talk about.
Right. Right. Well, this might be your call to action, is putting this out there to somebody who wants to be your mentor. So if you really like Mike, and you want to be his mentor, his information is in our podcast stuff. And frankly, I've gotten to know you over the last few years, and you're a super good dude. I love the fact that you're doing some really great things with Michael, and Click 360 is one of those things that I'm always have a hard time wrapping my head all the way around, but that's when it's good. And that's when that it's got some great opportunity to really help some people. So I'm super happy to have you on the show, and I appreciate all the insight that you're able to share with everybody.
I appreciate you, man. And here's the mentorship thing. I've always thought you can learn something from everyone you meet. And so in many ways, I feel like, you have many mentors everywhere. And I think I've even learned stuff from you, right? Like, so the first time I sit down with folks, I will just listen to what they do. Yeah. Like you taught me, it's like, if they want to know more about you, they'll ask.
Heck yeah. Curiosity, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I appreciate what you're doing.
Cool, brother. Where can people find you?
So if they just want to learn more about the platform, just on a high level, there's some great explainer videos on click360.io. Mm-hmm. And if they want to have an actual, just a deeper conversation on marketing, first party customer journey, all that kind of stuff, they can talk to me directly at mike.lewis@click360.io. Cool.
Plus LinkedIn and any other social stuff?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to find me. Twitter, I'm not very up on anymore. And Facebook, we have a Facebook page, but I think most of our conversations happen, LinkedIn for sure.
All right.
And direct.
Right, cool.
You can call me too.
Right. All right. We're not going to post your phone number, so they can send you an email. Let's not get carried away here.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you being on the show. On behalf of Mike Lewis, this has been the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time.